Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I am an author, idiot, and as you may know, a cult leader. I have gathered you all here today for the induction. You have received the invitation. I see that you have received the invitation, which is why you are here. If you did not receive the invitation, I don't know why you would even be here, because this is a super secret meeting that only the most elite and pure of hearted can attend to become a mistake yourself. Yes, the most high ranking. And as you may see, if you become part of the mistakes, you will be able to select your own eyebrows. For every act of mistakery that you make, you get another eye above your brow. The black eye, of course, being the highest level in the brotherhood, sisterhood, mistakerhood. Of course, my 11 black eyes signify the highest rank of a mistake, which is a natural disaster. With enough mistakes, even you can become a one and the same. Welcome to the club. But for real, everybody, welcome. Happy first Monday of the month. I am your host, Ian Kirkpatrick. I am all of the things that I have just stated. Cult leader is just the secret title that don't expect me to ever say it again. Because only you, the members of the super secret club, can know that. And today, as you may know, is the first Monday of the month. And on the first Monday of the month, we celebrate the contemporary writers of today, which is you guys. No matter what level you're at, whether you are a little baby writer just starting out, trying to get your little fingertippies wet, or you are building your skills, or you believe that you are the next legacy writer, this place is for you. Because I may not love everything that is written, but I do think that there is incredible art being made by my contemporaries and my peers today and the peers that come after me. And so I want to celebrate and give a chance to just have a good time with creative writing. So that's what we are doing here today. You guys are the whole reason that LMIAY exists. You're the whole reason that the cult expands. And so I want to celebrate what you guys do. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, if you want to join the mistakes, become a member, get possibly your own black eyes someday, maybe, send to natural disaster, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through what we're doing here today, which is the monthly prompt challenge, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in that creative genius, that creative uniqueness that is you guys. And the second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit the first chapter and the cover, it'll be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work, because I want to share what you're doing out there, even if I can't necessarily read every book. I'm sorry, I do not read that fast. I'm trying the best that I can, but I still don't read fast enough. The third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they are available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the local library upon request. Audiobooks for the Bodymore series are being worked on as we speak, and Bodymore Zero comes out in October, so keep yourself prepared for Bodymore Zero's arcs if you want to get your hands on an early copy. And possibly talking about some other fun things maybe to attempt to do for release. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence in myself. That's not really a good thing to say when you're launching a book. I love the book. I don't expect other people to love it, but I love it. With that said, enough about me. Let's jump into LMIAY. Okay, so in case you're wondering what is with the eyes, what is with the cult reveal, because clearly there are some questions to be answered with the cult. And that is, this month's LMIAY was actually, you or your character receives an innocuous invitation to join the Illuminati. Now let's get the mood lighting correct. We don't need that dumpster fire in the corner over there. So it's just going to be you, me, the darkness, the Illuminati, spirits, and your beautiful creativity. With that said, let's jump into it. The first story of today is brought to you by Yuto The Gentleman, which, welcome, that sounds like a new name. Welcome to the new cultist members. I mean, the newest mistakes. You're an honorary mistake if you're in LMIAY. Like, even if you don't subscribe, honorary mistake. So thank you. And welcome. Welcome appropriately. I was reading by the fire when I heard the post hit the floor. I looked up in surprise. I hesitated before getting up and slowly walking over holding a candle. Picking up the letter and turning it over, I saw that it was addressed to me. Strange. No one ever contacted me anymore. But there it was. My name and my address. I sat down my candle and opened the letter. Dear Arthur Maisley Moore, we have been observing you lately. We have noticed how lonely you seem, always sitting by the fire reading the same book upside down. But we have had a discussion with the boss, and we are delighted to be offering you the opportunity to join the group, the Illuminati. Sincerely, Eldon 191. I looked in shock and then turned to the window, but all I could see was the storm clouds. I glanced back and then gently placed the letter next to the candle. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, wondering if it was some ruggamuffin's idea of a joke. I went back to my chair and picked up my book. But I couldn't focus. I kept staring back at the letter. The candles were slowly dimming as I sat for hours. I felt tired. I soon fell asleep. I woke up and saw a figure standing over me. In any other situation, I would have been petrified, but this night was different. I remember the letter from the Illuminati and wondered if this was something to do with it. You do not scare me. The figure steps back and lowers its hood, revealing a young man with black and white hair and golden eyes on his forehead. It wasn't my intent. I noticed that you hadn't answered the note. I am Eldon 191. I told you, the eyes are all part of the establishment, are all part of the familia. If you join the mistakes proper, you should receive this token of appreciation someday for your mistakeries. Also, this guy sounds pretty hot. Let's not lie. This guy, young man, black and white hair, golden eyes on the forehead, sounds like a hottie with a body. I bet there are more eyeballs under his shirt. Between you and me, I seen some angels, and them angels will burn your eyes with how hot they are. You don't even know, but it's worth it. Okay, it's worth it. So welcome to the fam. Welcome to the fam, Yuto. And also, great first entry, great intro to what we're here doing today. The next entry is by longtime cultist, Mae Tanner. Batris slipped the garrote over his target's head and jerked it tight. The woman fought for breath, clawing at her throat. He twisted the cord until it sank deep into her flesh. Her struggles weakened until she hung limp in his grasp. He pressed his hands against her cheeks and twisted, snapping her neck. He dropped the now empty husk and turned. The blinking red light caught his attention, and he froze. His face was full view of the camera. Why was a functional camera in this part of the city? He grabbed the disruptor from his belt and triggered it. The light went dark. He clambered up to the camera and detached it from the mooring. After opening the case, he wiped the memory card before reattaching it to the post, ensuring it would resume its normal function in 5 minutes. He'd be long gone before then. When he arrived home, he stored his hunting gear in a secret cubby inside of the wall of his apartment. He settled on the couch and closed his eyes. There was no point in fleeing. He'd know soon enough if the camera had alerted the law. The following morning, he jerked awake. He scanned the room. Nothing had disturbed his rest. He'd spent the night on the couch for no reason. He dragged himself to his feet and dressed for work, prepared for another long, dull week. That evening, he trudged home. 4 more days until the weekend. 4 more days until he could hunt again. An amber light glowed inside of the door. Batris furrowed his brow. Who could have sent him a package? He checked the mail receptacle and retrieved an envelope before opening the door and entering his apartment. Once inside, he opened the envelope. It contained a sheet of gold-tinted paper. Handwritten on the paper were the following words: "Please join us in our harvest festivities this equinox. Come to 36 Celeber Street on Equinox Day at sunset. Don't be late. Your presence is required. Excuses will not be accepted." Batrice frowned at the invitation. Who sends physical invitations? He examined the envelope. It bore the name and address in the same writing as the paper that it had contained. The last sentence of the invitation drew his attention. "Excuses will not be accepted, huh?" He sighed and dropped the invitation. It landed on the floor with a soft clunk. He picked it up and turned it over. Glued to the back with a memory card. A chill filled his heart. Early on Equinox Day, Batrice scouted the address from the invitation. The building that he found was nondescript, with shades drawn on every window. He glanced around. Celeber Street was behind the beloved leader's mansion. He snorted. The ruler of the world was hardly beloved. At sundown, he approached the door. It slid open as he reached for the buzzer. He stepped inside, and it shut behind him. Lights lit up the floor, forming a pattern of arrows that pointed down the hallways. He followed the arrows to an open doorway, where he stopped, gazing in the room. Mirrors lined the halls behind long tables, loaded with rare delicacies. A dozen masked people stood or sat around the room. What appeared to be a woman wearing a clown mask approached him and offered him a blank mask. "Welcome, Batrice. Please wear this during the festivities." The woman's mask distorted her voice. He accepted the mask and donned it. The mask molded to his face as it morphed into the ultimate form. Red-tinted glass in the mask's eye holes gave everything an orange and red tint. The woman tittered. "It suits you. Follow me." She led the way around the room and introduced him to the others before gesturing toward the refreshment table. "Serve yourself." He peered at himself in the mirrors. The mask had taken the form of an ugly demonic face. Unfamiliar delicacies covered the refreshment table. He picked through them, filling the plate with cheese and crackers. Those should be edible. He searched the beverages next. The labels that he recognized were fruity libations and not to his taste. As he despaired of finding something he'd drink, he spotted a bottle of tater mash. He grabbed the bottle and glass. When he left the refreshment table, a person wearing a mask that was a garish caricature of a woman's face beckoned him. "Come join us. The show is about to begin." As he sat, a screen in the tabletop glowed and a scene took form. Batrice stared, his heart pounding. The video showed him fitting through a back alley, stalking the woman that he'd hunted 3 days before. The person who'd invited him to the table giggled. "Was she someone you knew?" "No, I'd never seen her before." His host's breath came hard and fast. "How delightful." The video continued. At the point where he'd noticed the camera, it occurred to Batrice that there'd been a second camera on a drone, which followed him home. He steeled himself. When the video ended, the person beside him drew a deep breath and turned to Batrice. "Would you like to join us? It's a lifelong position, and we have an opening right now." Batrice's jaw dropped. "Join you?" "You don't really have a choice, you know." Beautiful setup. Beautiful tension. Beautiful lead-in. I really liked the vibe. Also, like, you didn't have to do a whole lot of description. Obviously, it was like a nondescript building. But even what was given with enough setting, with the focuses, with the masks, I loved the masks. I'm actually more interested. It's not heavy, but it has a sense of mystery and a sense of supernatural. I mean, it's the Illuminati, so clearly supernatural. But the use of the masks and the shapes of the masks and how they kind of take on a shape of their own, beautiful. The next story is by Dream-Diffuser. Brand new mistake, brand new to the cult. Welcome. Glad to have you. And, like, really, I am always so happy when new people come and feel comfortable enough to submit to the feature because, I mean, now that's 2 of you so far at just the beginning of this. But I love when new people come because I know that it is so hard to get the courage to put your work out there for the first time, that it is really scary. And so I am so glad and so happy to get to meet and see new authors, no matter what level you're at, and to just have the chance to kind of share in the creativity either way, because I don't think it's any small feat. Like, you can ask anybody that has had their books read on the Loin stream even, that it is scary. So hats off to everybody all the time, and welcome to every first time submission that has come in with the cult. Enough mistakes and you'll get your own eyes, I'm sure. Your own third and 11th eye. The story is called The Invitation. Karen stood at the entrance to the virtual ballroom, overburdened with high tables, avatars making exaggerated hand movements, and gaudy chandeliers. A sign on the easel next to her read, Illuminati Chapter Alpha 6 welcomes new members. Karen's stream had accumulated a few hundred diehard supporters, so she gave her usual welcome speech. Good day, chat. I'm coming to you with another stupid scam failure. I received another message this morning inviting me to join the Illuminati and attend this outdated VR meeting. I could not resist the urge to join them and figure I might as well stream it for your entertainment. An avatar of a tall, lean, boyish-looking man in a tuxedo stuttered over from across the ballroom and reached out his hand. You must be Karen. We are glad that you could join us. I'm Ricardo. Please, enjoy some hors d'oeuvres. Karen grasped his hand to feel the satisfying haptic feedback in her glove. Yes, of course. I've always known the Illuminati was real, but I never thought that you'd be interested in someone like me. Your reputation speaks for itself. Follow me. I'll introduce you to our chapter president. Ricardo led Karen to the other end of the ballroom, where the sound of AI-generated jazz music grew louder with each step. Miss Lynch, this is Fredo, Ricardo said. A shorter but more muscular avatar in a black cloak stood before Karen. The figure seemed to have no face inside of the oversized hood. Unfortunately, I have other business to attend, but you are in good hands with Fredo. Welcome to the organization. Ricardo bowed to Fredo and vanished. Karen considered the absurdity of Fredo's appearance. Wow, that's quite an avatar you have. Tell me what I need to do to join up. I'm guessing that there is an invitation? After briefly staring at each other, Fredo turned the palms of his hand upward and produced a glowing black crystal. Its reflective surface showed a warped image of Karen's pink-haired anime girl avatar. Cool crystal. Is that for me? Karen said sarcastically. 2 rows of unnaturally white teeth revealed themselves inside of the hood. Fredo raised his hands and held a black crystal near Karen's face. All you have to do is touch it, and you are in. Karen referred to the chat. Now approaching 5,000 viewers, most wanted her to take the crystal. A few expressed concerns that it could be a trap, but Karen felt confident that there was no risk. With a raised fist and a "For Valhalla" war cry, she snatched the crystal. Upon contact, the vibration feedback in her gloves started triggering randomly, and the crystal exploded with a flash. The crystal fragments darted through the room, striking the other avatars as they fell to the floor and vanished. Karen and Fredo were now alone. I believe that you have misread the situation, Fredo said. The black dust and fragments from the crystal rushed to the back of the ballroom and reconstituted into a 2-dimensional floating screen. Fredo pushed an invisible button with his finger, and a cycle series of live camera feeds appeared. The first feed was a medical office waiting room. The other were webcams from the staff computers. What is this? She asked. A dull heat inside of Karen's chest intensified until it felt like lava. This is the internal network for the clinic where your mother is currently receiving chemotherapy. You don't recognize it? You used to bring her here, at least in the beginning. Fredo snapped his fingers, and the live camera feeds were replaced by a grid of instrument data panels showing medication feed rates. Karen knew immediately that these controls were infusion pumps used for chemotherapy. One of the panels had the name of Karen's mother at the top. This could still be a bluff, she thought to herself. The private messages from Karen's work supervisor appeared in her display. Karen, kill the stream now. This is real. Fredo's avatar leaned forward and spoke loudly. You have 30 seconds to give us access to your company's server. If you fail to do this, your mother dies. Do you understand? Karen ended the live stream. Tightness gripped her chest until she remembered that gaining control of a medical device was significantly more complicated than stealing its information. I have a mid-level access at best, and anything that you upload will get sniffed out. You really think blackmailing me is going to work? The ballroom turned pitch black, illuminated only by lighting effects from their avatars. 15 seconds. Time to decide, he said. A surge of energy flowed through her. You know what, Fredo? I think you're full of shit. Nice try. I'm out. Karen held down the power button on her headset until it flickered off. She called her mother, who answered immediately and reported that the clinic had just stopped her treatment. Karen received another message from her supervisor instructing her to come to the office and speak to an investigator immediately. Let's get this over with, she said aloud. A few minutes later, the darkness of Karen's home office was pierced by a flashing light of her headset's green LED power indicator. The display turned back on and showed a single image, a glowing black crystal. The image of the crystal faded, and the hijacked headset commenced the takeover of Karen's home network. The group masquerading as the Illuminati had succeeded. The most advanced cyber attack in history was about to begin. Great first entry, Dream-Diffuser. The build-up, the use of VR in this, having the magical elements of the cult, but also, like, it's magic, but also the cyber attack, so you're mixing technology and cult, or occultism. We know that streamers don't think their actions through enough, as long as it's content, right? I wonder how many streamers have accidentally joined a cult for that very reason. The next story is by John Morley called Slap in the Face. Ray Clark Olson couldn't believe it. His pre-order had shipped. Walmart pre-orders never shipped. What a slap in the face to true fans. But it shipped. It really did. The Masters of the Universe Origins figure of Terror, a toy planned but not produced for the cancelled 1987 Powers of Grayskull line, painted purple and cobbled together from parts of pre-existing toys Whiplash, Rattler, Trapjaw, and Moscator. It was a cheap, garish eyesore. But he had missed out on the Masters of the Universe Classics convention, exclusive to Roar in 2015, and he'd be damned if this one slipped through his grasp as well. He had waited early in the morning, surrounded by bathroom sink, as he delayed his shower to place the order. But even though it had sold out in 2 minutes, he had gotten it and Walmart hadn't canceled his pre-order in the months since. But now the UPS tracking had an alert. Customer action required. Pickup on-site at facility. That's annoying. Another slap in the face, Ray muttered as he got into his car, cleared away the empty boxes from last week's Target Holathon toy run, and got on the road. The address took him to an unmarked warehouse downtown, not belonging to Walmart or the UPS, so he assumed that there was a locker somewhere. It had worked for Amazon, right? Hello? Ray called out as he entered the empty building, a vast, dark room lit only by the beams of a few isolated light bulbs. I'm here for a package? My package? I've got my tracking number and everything. A slender, shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, light glinting from eyeglass lenses like flashes of dark starfire. You've come. So you've come. Welcome. I am the Guru. Ray blinked in confusion. Scott? Guru, the Guru collected. We use titles here. Welcome, Ray C. Olson, to the Illuminati. The what? He asked, still confused as to what the guy from all the online forums was doing here. Hadn't the Guru worked for Mattel? Was this a Mattel thing? The Illuminati, the Guru repeated. We are the movers and shakers, the elites behind the scenes, the rulers of darkness, the shadow government. We have seen your coded communications, and the council has voted to allow you into our circle. Ray stared blankly. Guru adjusted his glasses. You've been using our code words for years. A slap in the face. This raped my childhood. They're just pandering, not real fans, and many others. Come with me, Ray, and I will take you on a tour of our facility. Wait, but Ray began to say before the guru led him further into the warehouse, and more lights turned on, illuminating the vast room and everything inside. Warehouse? No, it's a temple. A muscular, skull-faced god carved of stone, its eye sockets filled with gems, overlooked the chamber. Hooded and robed cultists, each decorated with a symbol of spiky red suns, bowed in worship. This is where we control the world through coded messages, Guru said. Slap in the face means to start a war. Raped my childhood means that it's time to fix an election. We've got codes for overthrowing the governments, inventing viruses, inventing vaccines, lacing the water supply with nanites, you name it. Every time you hear another cheap cash grab, it means we're about to collapse the economy. Just another woke remake is a signal to replace more politicians with robot clones. Remember when we released the Roboto figure in 2010 with the wrong arms? That wasn't bad quality control. It was a signal to send more chemtrails. So, about terror. And you've been following all of our coded conversations, agreeing with the consensus and even making valuable suggestions, Guru said as he paused by an eldritch altar and lifted a dark chalice. We've performed 10 assassinations under your prospective advice and strengthened our hold over the world by 10 and strengthened our hold over the world 100-fold. The tracking said, and now here we are in our sanctuary, Guru said as he held the chalice high. In this cup is the black blood of the earth, mined from the hollow world of the Deros and lizard people. It is the source of the Illuminati's power and influence. Once you drink of it, you will be one kin with the dragon and shall live forever, ruling the earth with unlimited power and influence. All that you desire shall be yours. This world shall be crushed beneath our iron scepters. Ray Clark Olsen, are you prepared to join the Shadow Order? Yes. Speaking of an order, just to make sure, Ray said, you have the figure here, right? It didn't get lost in the mail? Silence fell across the dark temple, broken only by the sloshing of dark liquid in the chalice. Wait, you're really a toy collector? The guru asked, adjusting his glasses. You were actually trying to buy terror? Yeah, Ray said. And you genuinely meant all of those things that you said on the forum? Yup. You're just here for the toys? Yes. The guru stared at him and set the chalice back down on the altar. The liquid inside sloshed one more time. The silence was more than palpable. Ray returned home that night, confused, his new terror figure in his hands. Well, the Walmart pre-order had shipped, and that was good. All of the other stuff was pretty confusing, and he understood that he had to decide whether he truly believed it or not. Would he ignore it and live like nothing had happened? Or could he use the secret knowledge to change the world? Could they reinvent him in the future? Might he someday return to the Dark Temple? I probably wouldn't be good at ruling the world anyway, Ray said as he opened the front door and went home. Come to think of it, the new toy would look great on his display shelf. Maybe it wasn't such a slap in the face after all. Gotta be careful. Gotta be careful with those online postings, Ray. They're watching you. They are always watching you, looking for ways to induct you. Obviously, absolute king moment because he was controlling world politics without even knowing it. That story is so you, John, and I love that it also uses your love for action figures and mixes it in there, and it's also got Like, your playfulness and your humor that shows in the chat, what a delight. The next story is by Machined Hearts, the artist formerly known as Anonymous. Welcome to the Mistakes Proper. My heart raced as I approached the staircase hidden in the dark alleyway. With anxiety coursing through my veins, my eyes wandered to the rough-textured envelope sent to me on that fateful day. "You've been invited," the letter without a return address began, with a handwritten serif upon the mother-of-pearl paper stock. The moment that I broke the envelope, red wax seal, hints of lavender and cherry scent wafted, erasing my skepticism. Now I was here, staring down a dank, lichen-addled brick staircase, doubting my decisions. The thought of the first sentence that they chose me, picked for my excellence, spurred my first step upon the alcove stairs. After all these years, finally someone saw me for who I really was, and wrote such a deep, meaningful letter. They wanted me to join their elusive club. It took me ages to finally decide. At first, I worried that in my hesitancy, they'd lost interest and forgot about me, moving on to other, more responsive candidates. But faster than I sent my RSVP, they responded with eagerness, ready for me to arrive. I hugged my coat as the dampness of the underground tunnel permeated my bones. But with each footstep closer, I heard the rhythmic beat pulsating afar. Bass resonated from deep within the stones. As I exited on the other side of the narrow thoroughfare, I found myself within the confines of the cavernous antechamber. Though the staircase wasn't steep, it felt like we were miles beneath the city. There was no way to see how high the room was, but the crackle of the antique torches, which lit both sides of the massive set of wooden double doors with iron ring handles, echoed from overhead. Standing on one side of the lone entryway was a bald-headed man with dark sunglasses and a gray suit. At that moment, I contemplated retreat. What a fool's game this was, to be accepted into the elusive Illuminati. How could I be so dumb as to think that this wasn't something more than an elaborate prank? Before I could tuck tail and run, the doorman pushed open the gateway and motioned inside. "They're waiting for you." His baritone voice was overpowered by a sudden cacophony of musical notes escaping from the parted doors. My heart raced. It was real. Swallowing hard, I decided to move toward destiny. Meeting me on my first step toward greatness was a familiar scent of lavender and cherry, easing my nerves. I gave a short nod to the doorman and stepped inside. Behind, the entrance closed. There was no turning back now. I found myself in a dimly lit auditorium. On stage, a musical act played. They were a group of 7 men. Yellow and pink pastel lights shined as the performers swayed and danced around. The musicians wore matching outfits, white tops with royal blue purple pants, and golden shoes with oversized iridescent coats adorned in floral patterns. Enamored by their choreography and beautiful voices, singing in Korean, I couldn't help but stand and stare in awe. "And the star of our show has arrived." The musical group's leader called after the song ended, his perfectly frosted hair held in place as he motioned to me. My heart leaped into my throat as multiple spotlights converged on me, blasting me in an oppressive radiance. "Come, come," the lead singer called, beckoning to me. "Don't make me wait any longer," he playfully begged. Stifling panic, I stumbled into motion down the red velvet carpet toward the stage. The ushers lining the walkway nodded and motioned for me to continue on toward the group. I gripped the envelope, unsure of what was going to happen next and terrified of getting on stage. Before I was irradiated by the stage lights, I saw what looked to be a packed house, thousands of cheering fans for this group. I fought back, trembling as I arrived on stage. One of the other members urged me forth to stand between them, and I did. Before I could figure out what was going on, a massive plush velvet armchair rolled up from behind me, and I stumbled back and sat upon it. A throne. A golden shimmering crown was placed upon my head, and a scepter was placed in my hand. If this was a prank, This was overwhelmingly elaborate. As floral petals fell from overhead, the lead singer knelt like a knight waiting to receive commendations from his regent. To only the chaotic beat of the cheering crowd, the singer began a ballad. His perfectly glossed lips glistened in the now crimson stage light. With each breathy verse, he battered his flawless guyliner eyes at me, then stood to pace around a chair with an intense, measured pace. I forgot about everything else, unable to focus on anything but him. After the rest of the group sang the chorus, the stage fell dark. Then they rearranged in a semicircle around me, and the lead singer returned to kneeling, sliding his hand to take mine. "So, you've decided to join us, the Illuminati," he spoke, hopeful, his eyes wide and wanting. Lost in his gaze, I impulsively nodded. He produced a massive stack of papers and then peeled all but the last page away, revealing a signature line. One of the other musical members offered a pen. I must know your name." My mind raced, unable to contain my desire as I signed. The lead singer smiled a soft, pearly grin. "Pawn Z." Beautiful. I like that they did this differently, where it's not like this super scary. Well, I mean, it's scary in a different way. Like, it's not a nondescript, and it's not a dark castle-like room. It's a concert where you're kind of being treated like a king, which also would be an interesting story of somebody ascending to, the messiah of a cult, and they never asked for it. But all of a sudden, they are a cult leader, probably underprepared, let's be real, because most of us are. Not speaking from experience, I swear. Very fun. I shouldn't say always, but I love the music and the devil cliche. Sorry. I just do. You can't blame me for it. Casey is that cliche. A little bit. Just a little bit. The next story is by Bob Franks. Welcome to The Mistakes Proper as your first submission. "Are you sure that's not Greedy's mail?" Caleb Souther, the taller of the two vampires, asked, face plain, but for cold green eyes forever glinting with thought and fury. "For the last time," Thomas of Burko sighed. "Yes, I am sure. I got it directly from the postal worker. Now quit pestering me and try to act presentable." With the elegance befit of royalty, he put the sunglasses on, crimson eyes hidden away for now. For the finishing touch, he put on his signature ruby ring. Caleb put on his best smile. True royalty wore that over capes. Maintained it as he adjusted the fur collar, an irritant tolerated only for these occasions. Though he would have preferred the real thing, what was the only thing that he had in black? Thomas insisted on black, which only stood to make their pale skin shine all that much more. Tonight hadn't allowed them much time to prepare. The mail had arrived late, and they had awoken later still, far past the expected hour. At least the invitation promised a party lasting until early dawn at least. And more importantly, all you can eat. I swear, if this is just another hunter ploy, another goof or gag that results in another boring night. Caleb fixed his cold stare directly onto Thomas, who simply smirked in reply. "Look," Thomas held his hands out defensively. "I got a good feeling about this one, and look at this!" He held out the invitation. A simple little thing compacted in a blue envelope, complete with a red stamp of some sort of pyramid on it, addressed as to whom it may concern. "Pretty cool, as mortals say." Thomas chuckled to himself as the elevator finally stopped, golden doors sliding open as he strode through the hall. Caleb rolled his eyes, following after. "Did they have wine? Did they say what would be served?" "First rule, we must never drink." Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder, leaning in close, voice barely above a whisper as he dragged out the word, "wine." Before Caleb could react, Thomas rushed forward and kicked open the doors while he held out his arms to give a courtly bow. "Salutations! We are here to party and to mingle. Just two normal people, absolutely here for normal people reasons." The music screeched to a halt in a theater-like complex while the partygoers simply stared, stunned into silence. Caleb kept his distance, slowly slipping into view. smile maintained while scanning the area. He was taken aback by the ring of white robes and gold masks circling a freshly prepared sacrifice at the room's center. A statue of some demon's, deity or otherwise, stood centennial above all. Ram horns extended from above its head, golden scepters held in its right arm. Dark calluses circled its cloven feet. Caleb raised a finger, retracted it for a second, decided on silence as he stared at the crowd. Thomas held his pose. The crowd regarded them both before tensing up for a fight. "Welcome," the leader's voice boomed. Are you here to celebrate the coming of Moloch? We have tropical punch over there. Robes are complimentary." Caleb groaned as he glanced over at the tacky table draped in off-color beige. Tropical punch. Terrible decor, white robes. Oh no. Rubbing his temples, he slowly walked back into the hallway. "Thomas, I can't be seen with these people. I have street cred to defend." Then, in a flash, he and his smile were gone. Thomas cleared his throat and then lowered his arms. So who are you guys exactly?" The crowd laughed. Then one pointed up above. Right in the middle of the room was a pyramid. The pyramid. I and everything. "Illuminati." Thomas frowned. "Well, yeah, you got an invitation," the leader scoffed, tilting his head ever so slightly. "Straight from Moloch himself." "Yeah," Thomas nodded, slowly backing up. "Of course." The leader's eyes went wide. He pointed directly at Thomas's ring. "Oh, Moloch! You're Freemasons? Away with you, defilers! Slaves of Mammon, be gone!" Gasps escaped the crowd. "Freemasons? We can't be seen with them. What of our reputation? They'll think that we let anyone in here." Thomas was about to speak, but simply bowed. Slowly, he closed the doors behind himself before sprinting back to the elevator. Sorry? It's not my fault." Caleb rapidly pushed the button, growled through his gritted teeth. Only you would get invited to an Illuminati convention. Next, you'll have us join the Knights Templar, or better yet, the Assassins." The elevator dinged open. Both stepped inside as Thomas apologized repeatedly. "Hey, it said all that you can eat." Thomas sighed before looking at the letter. Pulling it close, he stared at the bottom. Know what's funny now that I think about it? What? I think this might be Grady's mail after all. The limit on Caleb's patience finally broke. "You Very fun. I like that this did a more kind of comedic, kind of episodic, also not expected, instead of them being inducted or tricked into something. I mean, they clearly checking somebody else's mail or getting somebody else's mail. But it was not super serious, and they did just walk away. And they were both like, freaking trying to defend my street cred. You're going to mess this up, bro. You know, they probably lucky that the vampires only walked away. But also, I like that the one vampire dressed as like a pimp, basically, because he got his big giant ring. And also his faux fur. Very nice. Very fun. Also, it feels very you, from what I know about you. This is my favorite thing about reading books and stories from people. Is like, if you know the people, then you can kind of start seeing their personalities and how really how they kind of talk, or kind of how they see, if they're a little bit more angsty, if they're a little more playful. I mean, you really get to start to see people through the ways that they develop a story. That's the fun part. The next story is by longtime veteran mistake, daddy of the whole, daddy of tragedy, Mike VanHoose. I sat alone in front of my computer. Steady blinking on my cursor kept rhythm with the bass and drum beat of overplayed pop music just outside my study. I was lucky that no one had bothered trying to find me yet. I hadn't planned to make an appearance anyway. I was happy to not join in the festivities. The people outside were here for me anyway. They weren't my friends, they were Evie's. Friends were never my strong suit. Lost in the sterile white light of my laptop, I was oblivious to the fact that the party had become dead silent. A knock on my door, louder than necessary, sent my heart into attack mode. "What?" I choked out, the adrenaline that coursed through me. The door swung open with a violent shove. I didn't need to look over my shoulders to see the red-rimmed eyes of inebriated Evie staring a hole through me. Her hard gray eyes and pale complexion would have looked better on a gargoyle than a wife. My mistake. "You have a visitor," she hissed, furious that I refused to take part in my own birthday celebration. "I have a house full of visitors. One more isn't going to make a difference to me." I turned back to my laptop, trying to take solace in its harsh illuminations. "Get off your conspiracy theory-driven ass and come here, now." Evie wouldn't leave. She stood at the threshold of my one safe room and folded her arms in an alpha female dominant way that spoke louder than any browbeating that she could deliver. I felt my resolute crumble. Slowly, I pushed my chair away from the computer and turned to leave my only happy place on earth. "What is so damned important, Evie?" She led me through the house and spoke without looking at me, as if it were a burden. "You have a visitor. She's tall, blonde, and carrying a radio. I swear, Mike, if somebody ordered you a stripper, we're through." I closed my eyes and hoped that's exactly what it was. The dining room was packed with all of Evie's friends, most of which I had only a passing acquaintance. 2 neighbors from down the street stood beside my fireplace, drinking my bourbon from an antique lowball glass that I'd picked up at thrift stores. Another, a guy from Evie's work, carried a plate full of cucumber sandwiches and guacamole. He was also a guy that Evie was having an affair with, although she denied it. It didn't matter. All that mattered was this beautiful blonde woman standing in our foyer. She looked vaguely familiar, like a celebrity that I couldn't place. She nodded at me. "Mike?" Evie, in true Evie fashion, never let an opportunity to assert her dominance over me pass. "That's him. What kind of—" The newcomer's eyes darted to Evie as she snapped her fingers. "Not you." I asked Mike a question. Her tone left little to the imagination. She was not one to be messed with. "How dare you in my own—" Evie ranted for a few minutes, making sure that everyone at the party heard. Blonde lady ignored her, speaking only to me. "Mike, I have a song for you. Would you like to hear it?" Evie stepped nose to nose with the new guest. "He'll do no." Blondie didn't ruffle at all. She reached into her shirt pocket and pulled out a letter stamped Evie. Handing her the letter, the pretty stranger proceeded to send a text message to an unknown number. "Would you please read the letter out loud, Evie?" Caught off guard, Evie opened the letter and read quietly, just loud enough to be heard. "Evie, this letter serves as proof that what we might say or do is real. You have a secret account in the amount of $50,000. We have seized—" Evie's eyes widened, and what little color she had on her face drained when the newcomer handed her the cell phone that she had been texting on. "Go ahead. Call the bank." Instead of reaching for the phone, Evie's fist swung. The stranger, expecting the assault, countered and dropped Evie with one shot. I'd never been so happy. Turning her attention back to me, the stranger asked again, "Would you like to hear my song, Mike?" I couldn't speak, only nod yes. "Good." Setting her radio down and flipping the power button, she introduced herself. "My name is Taylor." "Hi, Taylor. I'm Mike." "We know." I chuckled. "We?" Taylor smiled. "Yeah, we." She glanced past me at the crowd, now silently wondering who this woman was. One lady, I didn't know who she was, blurted out, "Aren't you Taylor?" Just then, the loud blast of music drowned out her voice. Taylor looked at the crowd and stepped away from the door. "Party's over, people. Hurry up." The birthday party crowd scampered away, murmuring, "That can't be her, can it?" Alone, aside from the unconscious wife at my feet, Taylor began leading me to my study. "Listen, this is a one-time offer, okay?" "A one-time offer for what?" She winked and began. "You're all alone, it's a typical birthday night. You've been surrounded by people that you don't like. They'll never get your story like we do." I've heard this song before, but where? "Evie's such a bitch and she's gonna be upset. We're all about the kind of people that she hasn't met. No one can dominate them like we do." Oh my God, Taylor Swift. Your enemies are athletes, you're just bookworms. They get spray tans, you get a sunburn. Dreaming about the day when you wake up and find that your global control has been there the whole time. If you can see that we're the ones who understand you, feel the need to control is all around you. Join us and see Illuminati. Illuminati. I never looked back at Evie as Taylor and I walked out the door together. Mike. Not what I was expecting at all. You know, I never know what to expect with you. But when you go from Glampire to singing Taylor Swift Illuminati, I'm sorry if I bursted all of your eardrums with that. I tried my best. Do you need an SOS, though? That is the question. The next story is by the devout mistake, Egao Chan, called Crust Asians. Day of Lightness, 3/14/1010. Mission report for junior recruiting agent Bob Bowski. A senior agent in a colorful Hawaiian shirt and a thick pair of sunglasses sat across the desk from Bob. The entire room was dim and windowless. The only source of light was an unnecessary bright table lamp pointing right at Bob's face. Your name and your age, agent. Bob squirmed and tried to move his face away from the light. His bespoke, full-body black suit and metal cuffs chained him to the seat. The suit only looked good and cool to the newbies and outsiders. Right now, it was only a torture for him. Bob Bowski, 36. I've been serving the Illuminati for 2 years, Bob answered. Just answer the question asked, agent. The senior agent's voice was cold and emotionless. Yes, sir. How long have you been serving the Illuminati? 2 years, sir. What is the target's location of your last mission, agent? Crust Asian. It's a... Crustaceans? No. Crust Asians, sir. It's a store that sells high-protein pizza crusts. The senior agent grimaced. A pizza crust store? That's new. Who picked it? Bob took a deep breath. Agent Sanderson, my supervisor. Who is the target of recruitment? Someone named Egao, something. He's a crab. That's a strange name. What does it mean? I think it means satire. I think it means satire or parody in Mandarin, but I'm not sure. Who killed Agent Sanderson? The senior agent cut Bob off. Staff from the store, where we were still talking when the agents, they ambushed us. Agent Sanderson was shot in the chest, neck, and legs. Bob's voice began shaking. The hailstorm of bullets were still terrorizing him in the moment. Focus, agent. The senior agent knocked on the desk. What did they look like? Are they human? They're definitely not human, Bob shivered. They're men made of dough, light yellow, some light brown. Their faces were carved on using the pizza crust, using the pizza cutters. They had these thin slits or cuts as eyes. It's like they were all crustaceans. I get it, the senior agent said. What happened? So Agent Sanderson and I went into the store. We prepared everything per protocol. Profile on the target, securing the surroundings, everything. I was wearing the suit Agent Sanderson was, wearing what you're wearing, the senior agent uniform. We went in, and then almost immediately we saw the target. He's in a glass container with seawater. Oh, then what happened? The senior agent finally started taking notes, probably a good sign. It could also be a bad sign. Agent Sanderson went over and talked to him. Bob took another breath before continuing. Our intelligence was correct. The crab can talk, and he can actually speak human languages. And because he had eaten too much crab, he developed some kind of super crustacean brain. So he opened the store, developed the dough recipes, and started selling high-protein pizza crusts to all of the pizza chains in the area. What happened to it? You made it out with only yourself. Where's the recruit? He was boiled, Bob choked out as he tried his best to recall the story. I thought he controlled the store. Who did it? The doughman did it. Tears got into Bob's mouth, salty and tasted like blood. I tried to get Agent Sanderson and the crab out, but they just dismembered him right in front of me and turned on the water boiler. The crab was red and tasty smelling in just a few seconds. Okay, did you bring back any proof of it? Senior agent cut Bob off again. No, not really. Bob shook his head. Senior agent shook his head with disappointment. Do you know what creates those doughmen? I don't really know. Bob needed an answer. He was on the brink of demotion. He could feel it. Wait, maybe I do. Oh, do tell. People. It's people. Bob tried to rapid-fire his thoughts from his mind purely out of survival instinct. Agent Sanderson mentioned that the crab was always luring homeless people, junkies, and prostitutes into the store, and with enough of the human content mixed into this high-protein dough, it turned into people. Very good theory, Agent. The senior agent clapped his hands. Very good. Thank you, sir. Bob let out a breath of relief. And I know that the crab is dead already, but if we can get their recipes, imagine what we can do with it. The organization already has them, Agent. The senior agent put his notes and Bob's file together. So it's not of your concern anymore. Oh? Bob was at a loss for words. But why am I here? We're just going to make sure that you tell us everything that you know before. The senior agent stood up and adjusted his sunglasses. Well, you see, the Doughmen were pretty unhappy that your failed recruitment attempt cost them their recipe maker. The crab promised them a new recipe that would make them stronger, tangier, and longer lasting. But you and Agent Sanderson ruined it. So, as of right now, you are no longer an agent of the Illuminati, and you will be in the Doughnmen's custody. No, please, Bob cried and struggled as the senior agent slowly closed the door. No, I'm not even Asian. The crust Asians? Oh my gosh. This is the revival that the zombie apocalypse plot needed. Crust Asians. How are we going to beat them? If you see them covered in pizza sauce, are you going to assume that it's blood, or are you going to assume that it's saucy and eat them? Are they still warm? Are they stale? I have so many questions. The next story is by Axe Faye. And welcome. I don't remember seeing your name before, so welcome, brand new mistake proper. Raymond looked at the thick red paper with an almost nervous pit forming in his stomach. After 5 long years of attending ominous gatherings of fringe cults and other conspiracy-heavy groups that he'd found online, it seemed almost too convenient of an opportunity had been placed itself directly in his hands. Raymond Gailey was not what most people would describe when told the picture of a conspiracy nut. He came in at a decent 5'10", and he was somewhat athletic looking when he wasn't wearing the most oversized purple bunny slippers in the world. But he definitely didn't feel like the kind of person that the letter he was holding should be addressed to. Raymond Gailey, you have been humbly summoned to the centennial gathering of the Illuminated Order. We kindly ask you do not bring a camera or recording devices, as well as leaving all of your over-the-top weaponry at home. The incident's last gathering is not to be repeated for you returning guests, and you know who you are. Do not worry about transportations or lodgings, as these things will be provided for your convenience. Please be ready at 10 p.m., 200 hour, on 04/30/20XX. Pacing back and forth across the kitchen, Reed had to think of his next move. He wanted to bring something to prove that he was there, to document what was happening, but there was no way that there wouldn't be some kind of security. He needed to bring back evidence, otherwise this would all be for nothing. All of the hours of combing the internet for information and tips on how to brush shoulders with the elite, that he would finally be able to prove it all to the mods on poll. With the elites, he would finally be able to prove it to all of the mods on the poll boards that he wasn't insane. Hell, even the fact that they had put the unaddressed letter in his mailbox was less important at the moment than how he was going to be able to back up his new development when he updated the thread on 4chan. The first thing that he realized is that he wasn't going to be able to dress well enough at the meeting. There was no way. The first thing that he realized is that he wasn't going to be able to dress well enough for the meeting. There was no way these guys wore tacky robes like the amateurs meetings There was no way that these guys wore tacky robes like the amateur meetings he had seen so far. And what kind of thing was he expected to wear? Maybe a three-piece suit with a tacky robe over it just in case this wasn't real? Why the hell did they only give him a day to prepare? Is this how all of the exes felt when he sprung date reservations on them? Definitely getting off track. The only nice clothes that he owned was the light blue suit that he wore to his school senior picture day, because his mom had threatened to make him babysit his cousins all summer if he didn't. The only thing that convinced him was the button microphone that he'd bought from Amazon that he could hide in the weird buttonholes on his jacket, and after a quick YouTube video on how to sew a button, he truly felt like a spy in a TV show. The only thing that he needed was a cool secret code use over an earpiece. The only thing that he needed was a cool secret code use over the earpiece, and it would be perfect. By the time there was a car outside of his apartment to pick Raymond up, he was practically exhausted from being panicked. He was practically exhausted from being panicked to scared of what he was practically exhausted from being panicked to scared of what was to come, hoping that it was going to be the real deal. The fake button on his chest felt like it was burning a hole into his skin, like it was too obvious or painfully clear what he was trying to do. The driver was the only saving grace that he had, a woman who seemed to be in her 30s, who must have noticed instantly that something was wrong and told me that, "You don't need to be so tense, honey. You can always tell when it's someone's first time." He couldn't see her very well through the tinted glass that separated them, but she sounded nice, and she did most of the talking along the way, too. It was mostly about other people that she had driven like this, and how she was driving me back so it would be fine if you left those lovely robes in the car when we get there. It was hardly 45 minutes later when he was dropped off at the front of a ludicrously nice-looking mansion that had to cost at least 12 figures. There was a massive staircase that led up a set of doors guarded by two sunglasses-clad guys who looked like they had never smiled in their life. "Can I get your invitation, please?" the first guy asked as he got closer. Pulling out the envelope with a shaking hand, Raymond hands it over to the man, looking around nervously until it's handed back, and the other guy steps forward with what looks like a metal detector. "Before you enter, I need to check that you don't have any contraband on you. Please, stand with your arms at your sides." As Raymond does as he's told, the man runs the wand around him, front and back, before touching the ears and saying something that Raymond couldn't catch. After a moment, the men both turned to look at him. A blur of movement on his right took him by surprise, and he was shot twice, the shock making him stumble back and fall down the steps in a pile unceremoniously. Fucking idiot was wearing a button microphone on his suit. "Like we're some kind of amateurs," the guard laughed at his buddy. "Yeah, figures I didn't recognize his name. Probably some cocktail journalist," the other replied. Oh no, he didn't even get into the meeting. Buddy, Raymond, was it worth it? I know that you were trying to get the evidence, but buddy. He is just going to become one of those archived threads now where everyone is like, "Where you been, guy? Where have you been? It was all just a scam. Paul's never going to believe that it was true." The next story is by Alessi. "I didn't plan to join the Illuminati when I left the house this morning. I intended to sign on a multi-level marketing company, and those are two very different things. This whole thing started 2 weeks ago when I went to my first mommy playdate. 7 new moms gathered at Joanne's house. We called ourselves the Love Bugs because that's how mommy groups work, and arranged our babies in a circle, all fast asleep in their couriers, while Joanne passed around glasses of chilled rosé. It was the first time that I'd spoken to another adult woman since Amelia was born, so of course all I talked about was Amelia. One of the moms didn't say much. It wasn't until we were packed up that she pulled me aside and invited me to come to her house for tea. She did the same with the other moms. I won't bore you with the details. Turns out that she's not much of a tea drinker. That was a cover for selling me cleaning products. Actually, she was selling me on selling cleaning products for her, and I agreed to do it. Now, hear me out. These are really nice cleaners. They're not made from harsh chemicals, but from natural tea tree oils. I figured that nobody needs more lotions or jewelry, but everyone has to clean their house. And since my old work friends have stopped inviting me to happy hours and lunches, it'll be an easy excuse to invite them over, catch up, and drink some wine while I sell them stuff that they can actually use. Maybe I'll even make a little money. Anyway, she signed me up to attend a seminar at a DoubleTree. Bright and early this morning, I dropped the baby off with Mom and headed downtown. I guess maybe I programmed the wrong address into the GPS, or maybe I turned right instead of left. Some innocent mistake put me at the Wyndham instead of the DoubleTree. I didn't notice, and the helpful people at the front desk directed me to the only conference they had booked today. A small crowd milled around the table in front of the conference room. I strolled up with a smile, happy to see some adults who wouldn't ask me about Amelia. They handed me white robes, and I was stoked. Nobody told me that the training included a spa experience. Off I went to a side conference room partitioned into changing rooms. The bathrobe was a weird design with a hood and a zipper instead of an open front and sash. The other attendees had their hoods on, so I pulled mine up too, and followed them through the doors to the adjacent room. It was a cave-like space with dimmed lights and no windows. There was weird chanting music playing in the background and smoky incense wafting about the clouds. Instead of tables and chairs, square mats had been set on the floor in rows. Some of the robed inductees were already sitting cross-legged on them, so I joined them. I figured that we'd be meditating before we moved on to the training portion of the day. I was wrong. I can't tell you what happened next. I've been sworn to secrecy, but check it out. I got this cool tattoo on my wrist. It's just like a dollar bill, a pyramid with all-seeing eye on top. I got a membership card too. They'll get us into the first-class lounges whenever we travel, among other things. I can't tell you all the perks. Hope that you don't mind, honey. So, how was your day? The voice on this is great. I love the fact that she ended up at an Illuminati meeting while trying to go to a multi-level marketing company situation. And she just rolled with it. You know, I guess once you're in the room full of robed individuals, there is no getting out of it. You're there. And at least, you know what? At least it comes with perks. Congratulations, Miss Lady. I also like that it's kind of talking to the reader, or, you know, like interacting with maybe the spouse. I always love what you do, RS. I always love what you do, where it's got like the mystical with the regular. I say this probably every time, but like, I love the way that you write. The next story is by Spookyfirst, called An Invitation. When I was 5, my family went to the coast for a clam bake. Protected by Dad's affinity with water, we dug clams for dinner, leaving an equal offering of boiled eggs in return. While Mom warded our picnic tarp, she asked me to fetch dinnerware while the food cooked. I'd fallen in a patch of icky mud by the car, ruining my sundress to avoid breaking plates. Dad swung me up in his arms, laughing at my expression, plates tucked under my one arm. "Don't fret, kiddo. It'll wash out. Promise." Mom smiled, wiping off the worst of the wet cloth. We sat down to give thanks, my sister and brother half asleep from the sun and sea, holding hands as we sung. Good dreams and memories. I held my parents' hand tight, desperate. I hadn't seen them since I'd been cursed into an animal so terrifying people fainted at the sight. Did they even know that I was alive? Please, let me stay here. Mom, Dad, I miss you so much. What is the meaning of this? The voice grated my eyes open. As I raised my head, the canvas tinkled as the stakes hit together, long ropes hanging off the end of my nose. I'd started the night in pajamas. Now I was a dinosaur, not found in any record. Again. Now what? Alexander Monroe Baker. What in the nine hells do you think you're doing with that thing out there? In a tent? Why is it chained down? It was too early for verbal abuse. I pulled the canvas back over my head, exposing eyes big as dinner plates, raising to check the rest of the yard. 20 feet below my snout, an angry woman clamped hands on her hips. Her squawk of surprise became another litany of outraged arm-waving. Whatever spell she hurled fizzled. I pulled the big top under my chin with one huge taloned hand, using the other to cover my body with the rest of the tent, as if she caught me naked in the shower. She raced back to the transport of Alexi's driveway. The horn blared. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. We were surrounded by an untreated forest. Inorganic sound pissed off the trees. They would rip the transport to confetti to shut it up. Nobody could stop that, not even me. Seeing a 40-foot-long, 20-foot-tall dinosaur wearing a tent should be scary. Blaring a horn at dawn o'clock was suicidal. The slam of a door, followed by the outraged roar, startled me. My back foot tangled in tent rope, toppling me over onto the wood shed. It shattered under my weight, both legs up in the air. Both legs up in the air like an enormous chicken with a bag over its head. Low chuckles near my ear kept me still. Sorry, Ember. Can you shift human? Josh and Cord are out. Margie must have got around them. We have to get inside. I pulled the canvas clear of my muzzle. Got a necklace? She's too far for the fear whammy. I'd like to keep it in reserve. He shook the thick plate so the ceramic discs clinked. Margie is a curse hunter. She won't hold back. Remember what Alessi taught you. Control of the shift could put me out of their reach. I worked hard, but I wasn't there yet. It startled with a deep centering breath, the sensation of falling off a cliff to land inside of a claustrophobic flesh prison was less awful today. I clawed to the edge of the tent to find a robe, veil, and promised necklace on the grass. Blake stood with his back to me, arms crossed. He kept his eye on the transport where Alessi blocked the door. He wore nothing but a towel, long dark hair wet over his shoulder. The black tats on his skin shifted in the light. An ancient building filled the middle of his back. One I'd only seen in archived records. As I stared, the round rooftops welled up with color. Alessi had an Orthodox church tattooed on his back. There was only one place that he could have gotten it. Questions froze me in place. Blake stepped to the left to block the view. Stare later. We have to move. I wrapped up in a robe, donned the necklace, tying on the veil as fast as possible. Blake extended an arm, sneaking double time inside. I spotted a large thermos on the stove. Coffee might keep everyone alive. Did you make any? The grimace told me that he hadn't. Undeterred, I poured 3 mugs. Alessi had an unholy love of yak butter coffee. If it was fresh, the tang foamed in your mouth. If it wasn't, curds formed. No one wanted to go first. Alessi stormed through the front door. A tiger's eye blazed in his face over a trimmed beard. Red rage hung around him. He took Blake's mug, drained it, handed it back. Slow. I set mine on the table, shoving it over to him. Skinny girl. Bitch here to get proof against you. He picked up my mug and drained it. Stay human. He dropped the towel to walk to the laundry broom. I put my hands over my eyes. Calm. Strong emotions could set off a shift. Wrecking Alexi's house would give Margie all the ammunition she wanted. I could turn around without making a mess after a slow 10 count. Alessi emerged in black jeans, a t-shirt, barefoot. He pulled out a cigarette, put it in his mouth, clacking the lighter shut. He took a deep drag, held it, smoke streaming out of his nose. Margie grabbed the mailbag. Go out back. Check the transport. I'll stay here. Blake slipped out the back. Margie slammed the knockers so hard the door rattled. Alessi looked down at my hands. No magic. Give her nothing. What if she tries something first? I have faith in you, skinny girl. Be yourself. He opened the door so fast Margie stumbled. Even with me in height, she wasn't a warrior. Dark hair going gray was rolled in a bun on top her head, held in place with an intricate net. She wore layers of tunics, white underneath, the rest darker grays. A long-sleeved robe covered her hands. Skirts covered her feet. She looked down her nose when Alessi didn't leave. He parked himself against the archway, between the front hall and the kitchen, forcing her to step into the dining area. It put him right in her blind spot. I moved behind the breakfast bar before she turned around. Margie glided by the tables, as if she had wheels instead of feet, eyes too wide, the slight smile calculated to unsettle. I hadn't seen this trick in ages. She pulled an envelope out, fanning her face with it. "You have an admirer. I find it odd for a cursed tramp from Pariah Town." She spoke without moving her lips, to intimidate. Each emphasized word was an ice pick of pain through the air. She regarded the calligraphy. Myrtle is a prominent citizen, well-connected. It's not like him to seek trash for his amusement. She glided closer, proffering the envelope. "Come now, take it, unless you're scared." Alessi chuckled. Alexi's chuckle turned into a gout of smoke. She spun toward him. "This has nothing to do with you." I plucked the pair of barbecue tongs off a peg, unlocking them as I walked forward. A turn to the left kept the tongs out of sight and in my right hand. She turned back, arms in surprise. I snagged the tongs out, took the envelope, and stepped back before she could react. Slow, I put the envelope on the breakfast bar out of reach. I snapped the tongs at her. Fists clenched, magic rose around her. She didn't notice Alessi opened the front door. He wiggled his fingers at his eyes, plucking at the collar of his t-shirt. Without the necklace to stop it, fear in my curse hit people hard. Under the veil of my eyes were large, inhuman, capable of increasing panic. Like her posturing, it wasn't a direct attack. The veil pulled down under my chin, the necklace clinked on the table. The fear slammed into Margie as she caught my gaze. She gasped, unable to speak. I met her wide, terrified eyes without blinking. Her hands shook as all thought vanished but one. Run. Alessi stood as she fled, envelopes spinning out of her robes. The transport engine growled to life. Alessi shut the door on the rest, a mean smile on his face. I put the necklace back on, poking the envelope with the tongs. "I open it, if you wish." He was right beside me. "How can you always sneak up on me? Practice. Shall we see what Myrtle wants?" He picked up the envelope, pulled out the smaller envelope. An embossed invitation lay in his hands. He went utterly still. "What's wrong?" "I contract on case-by-case basis. Myrtle does the same. This is his way of telling me that he's been hired on the same case." "Yours." Slow, I reach for the card. "The Illuminati Club cordially extends an invitation for Amber McKibben +1 to partake in rough play night. Safe words required, lube optional." I run outside. Before I'd made it 10 steps, the shift took over, transforming my belly laughter into horrifying monster noises. I laughed so hard it pitched me forward, talons making divots in the sod. I turned to see Alessi framed in the doorway, scowling. I stood up, turned to look wide-eyed over my shoulder, and wiggled butt feathers at him. "Hey there, sexy. Wanna play?" The red crest feathers on top of my head bobbed up and down. His roar of laughter was music to my ears. "Well, spooky. The Illuminati Club, is it? Gonna go be Illuminatis together?" I feel like there are 2 Illuminati clubs. There's like the World Domination Illuminati, and then there is the Illuminati hee. If you know what I mean. Got some shifters going on. The next story is by Mistake Ben Hayward. The old man stooped on his cane as he stared out the window across the city skyline. Jack could see this business suit crumple and almost rip from the strain. Reflexively, Jack went to grasp his father, but was brushed off as the old man placed his body weight furtively on the window. "The world is falling apart, boy," he strained out. The words scraped out of his mouth as if pushed by his lungs. Jack looked with him into the cloudless blue sky, hearing the gentle brush of the wind and the distant tittering of birds. "It's not like how it used to be," his father continued. He had been making comments like this for years, ever since he had been restricted to the penthouse by the machine. His body had grown feeble, and he could no longer control the company. In his stead, Jack, or more accurately, Jack Jr., had taken over its day-to-day operations. He'd served as his father's proxy on the board, aside from the occasional time that he would ignore the doctor's orders and turn up in the flesh. He had to get home to his pregnant wife, Caitlin. She would need him. "It doesn't have to be this way," he finished. Jack could see the tears come down the old man's face. He could not understand why he was so upset all of a sudden. "I have to do it. I know I do." He strained feebly, his limbs not responding to instruction, eventually falling over onto his back. Reflexively, Jack lunged toward him to stop him from falling. He could feel his father's soft hands clasp onto him like an infant. Then there was a tiny sting. At first, nothing more than a mosquito bite. It escalated quickly with a searing heat. The pain was blinding and debilitated him. His blood stopped pumping around his circulatory system, as what felt like a power drill was pressed into the top of his spine. He fell to the floor, helpless. Was his father okay? He couldn't see him, and he didn't have enough strength to move his useless body. There was a final pang of pain. Jack awoke in a formless void, a slither of emptiness between some and elsewhere. He screamed, but there was no sound. He tried to run, but there was no movement. "Are you about done? You're embarrassing yourself." The void was lifted, like a set of heavy curtains revealing a giant chamber that looked something like a giant opera house. A man stood over him, looked like a framed picture of his uncle. Brill-creamed hair, wearing a smoked jacket, holding one of those cigarettes on a stick. He had died years before Jack was born, but had been outlived by Jack's father and several of his other uncles, all of whom Jack could also see in the background. "I'm sorry to say, Jack, you're dead." His uncle led him to a giant recliner seat and pulled up a single-seater button-back. On the stage, there was a massive screen that stood over his body, looking at a pair of youthful hands. Behind him, Jack could see 1,000 pairs of eyes staring at the screen as well. "Mortality is the mother of life, and he has turned his back on her," the spectacle of his uncle whispered to him. Jack never asked for this and pleaded to return. He had to get back to Caitlin. "None of us did. None of us can." He smiled weakly. "But it has its benefits. From here we are able to communicate with many other such entities as our father," he continued, gesturing at the screen, which was looking at Jack's emaciated corpse. "And we can control them. Mostly, except when they choose to feed and add someone to our ranks. This one has a penchant for his male relatives, and we really had to restrain it when you kept having sisters. I tell you that," he chuckled to himself. He paused. The words seemed to pain him. "It wasn't until Caitlin's ultrasound the other day, where it revealed that you were having a son, that we could no longer control it. We're sorry." Jack wept for a time unknown. Over time, with his uncle's help, he was able to control the beast of a sort. He was able to control what it said and mostly what it did, but it always was at a distance. The creature would always listen to its primal instincts first and his instructions second. He saw his boy be born. He saw him grow up and soon be joined by a brood of younger brothers. He knew that one day he too would have to help them along their way when the time came for the beast to devour his son in turn. Ooh, that kind of feels like almost like a modern sort of fairy tale kind of thing. It could, I think if it was a little longer, it could build into that story to set it up a little more. And I know I give a super constrained amount of time, obviously, because of how long this video already is. That felt like a modern warning of sorts of like the bad things that can happen for the trades that are made that you don't even necessarily know are being made. The final story for today is from Vladimir Novitski, called The Pilgrimage of the Hollow Saint. While most canonical in the retelling provided below, the tale of the Hollow Saint was the beginning of one of many Eastern heresies. In particular, it was heavily referenced in the church initiation rites that were conducted in the East. Back then, before the rebellion, it was not considered important enough to disturb the peace between the peoples under the Holy Church. Now, however, taking into account the marks people of the East bear since the rebellion began and their remarkable immunity of the craft, this story may warrant additional consideration. Signed, the third archivist of Lon Parvel, Zirin Milezervi, year 1344 of arrival. There once lived a man hailing from a valley surrounded by mountains. Rich and powerful he was, and jubilant in sin. Unto his neighbor he would come with war, and take the fruits of it, stained with blood. Dine he would, and drink without measure, and lay with women both lecherous and chaste. Foes he had many, and many sought to slay him, but neither blade nor poison took him. The devourer spoke with the tongue. The devourer spoke with his tongue, and with a word that he would kill. Out of oak a high throne for himself he had cut, and rest easy on it for a time. A great king. Winters came and passed, and the man's days became restless. Without sleep he would lay, and onto his bed the devourer would slink, with a sharp cat tongue his fingers lick. "Oh, my beloved king, my ruthless wielder," it would purr to him, "how sweet is the blood dripping off your tired fingers. Rest well, for soon you shall know me, as I've known you." Off his bed the king would leap, and with his sword cleave the demon, but in cat's steed 2 wolves would stand above him, and they would also be the devourer. On his oaken throne he would sit uneasy, and onto his shoulder the devourer would climb, with slimy toad tongue his forehead lick. "Oh, my beloved king, my hoarse herald," it would croak to him, "how sweet is the sweat dripping off your tired brow. Work hard, for soon you shall know me, as I've known you." Off his throne the king would leap, and with his deadly word curse the demon, but out of his mouth the viper would slither, and it would also be the devourer. Meek and afraid the king grew. For his sins he sought to atone before the world. Where before he took, he would now give. Where before he warred, he now sought peace. Yet the devourer's voice didn't quiet. Pious and chaste the king grew. For his sins he sought to atone before the heavens. Where before he feasted, he would now fast. Where before he yelled, he would now keep a silent vow. Yet the devourer's voice didn't quiet. One day the king took off his royal mantle and donned a coarse commoner garb, just a man once more. He took the last look at his wives and his daughters, for he begat no sons, and for the kingdom on his bare feet walked. Long did he walk the earth, his feet bloody and sore. Up the highest mountain he climbed, seeking salvation, but the peaks were silent to him. To the deepest caverns he descended, but they made the devourer's voice echo louder. In the end, the man came to a scorching desert. 6 days and 7 nights he walked before he collapsed, and in the first rays of the morning he saw a figure. Tall the figure stood, face darkened by the sun, hair red as fire. By the wound on his neck, bleeding with the sunlight, the man knew him and was afraid, for that was Olon, the radiant sun. "Stand before me, O child of man." The man stood, head bowed, trembling with fear. "Your plight I know. The beast to your back clings, my father's escaped hound, my own treacherous killer, my sister's unwitting conceiver," said the bringer of dawn. "With its voice you speak, with its claws your hand is adorned, and to its bowels your path leads." The man fell on his knees, raising his hands in a desperate plea. "Know this, child of man, as my sister is a shaper of clay, I am the carver of stone. Where she caresses, I cleave. Where she gives, I take away. Where her water soothes, my fire burns. Where she offers mercy, I pass judgment. The covenant I give shall not be a light one. Everything shall be taken from you, and a hollow man you shall be, with nothing to call your own." The man despaired at these words, but so great his fear of devourer was, he could do naught but to these terms agree. "So be it," spoke Olon, the twice living, and touched his fingers to his torn-out throat, the wound ever bleeding. A single drop of divine blood he collected and onto the man's tongue placed, and so the man's own blood became a scorching flame, burning him from inside. With my blood you shall now hear the pleas of the world as I hear them, to fulfill them and gain nothing in return. And so it was. Then Olon took the sword of fire, a morsel of divine flesh off of his arm flayed, and onto the man's tongue placed, and so the man's own flesh was broken, with deep marks scarred. With my flesh no evil shall dare touch it, and a courier of my covenant you shall be now. And a courier of my covenant you shall now be, to give it to others as I gave it to you. And so it was, and Olon was gone, vanishing with the last ray of the setting sun. But darkness did not fall on the man, for now he himself with Olon's light shone. By the touch of the daylight, Lord hollowed out a new saint. And so the saint turned back and walked the earth again. To the deepest caverns he descended once more. There he found a great serpent in watery depths, slithering, eternal, a grandchild to that which lies without sleep. To the water's surface the serpent came and pleaded with the saint. O great saint, touched by the dawn lord, with his flame this abyss you illuminate so brightly. If only I could take this blessed light down to the water's depths, for my prey is wily and cunning, and the darkness hides, so eternal hunger I must endure. Hear my pleas, I beseech you. And so the saint did, his own arm cutting off, and into the waters thrown it. At once the serpent swallowed it, and in its belly carried it into the depths, illuminating the unknown beneath. To the height of the mountains the saint climbed once more. There he found the great eagle, child of the earth, took to the skies, circling a peak. To the summit the eagle descended, and pleaded with the saint. Oh, great saint, touched by the dawn lord, this peak you illuminate like the first rays of the morning. If only this blessed light was of use to me, but from my very hatching I was blind, and my prey below I cannot see. So eternal hunger I must endure. Hear my plea, I beseech you. And so the saint did, his own eye gouging out, and to the eagle giving it. At once the eagle swallowed it and flew off, now of all birds in the keenest eye. Long did the saint walk, with blood on his feet, marking the earth with fire. Men and women he met, beset by the devourer and covenant of Olon. He gave to them. So as he be, they hollowed out. So many were they, drop by drop his blood was drained, and bit by bit his flesh was flayed. A figure of sun-bleached bone, he returned to the valley surrounded by mountains to find the old kingdom of his in ruins, torn and pillaged by war. No man nor woman could know him for their old king, so changed was he, and of his visage they were afraid. His own castle he found crumbling and old, and the high steps ascended to the high hall with the high oaken throne. Broken was the roof above it, and blessed son of Olon was warming the old wood. An orphaned child, dirty and gaunt, was perched on it, dark-eyed, wide and wild. The saint laughed and called out to the sky, O Lord, have you not deceived me? Everything you promised to take from me, and yet here I stand in my abode, into my eyes, my own heir staring. Better judgment you promised me, but in the end gave me the gentlest mercy. Into his bosom the saint reached, and took out his own beating heart, and into the child's dirty hands, placing it. Then on the ground he sat, and was no more, his bones becoming stone, and so by no evil those lands could ever be touched. There is something so magical and old and ancient feeling and mystical and it feels weighted in your work. Even the way that the sentences are structured, and I'm sure it's somewhat a difference of the language and then mixing the differences of the language, but there is such a slow, steady tempo that also makes it add a weight to the way that it's said, that also archaic's not the word that I want, but also it sort of is, because it's older, it's powerful. It's like, it feels like a word of mouth that would be traveled between villages that gives meaning and spirituality to something. And that's what this feels like. You've only been in 2 LMIAYs so far, though I've read a little bit more than just 2 LMIAYs of some of your work, and it feels very special. But you know, not to devalue anybody. That's my favorite thing about doing LMIAY. I give you guys all the same exact prompt, and without failure, everybody comes up with something so unique, so different, and so totally fitting of who you are that is so interesting to see where you all go with the stories. So those are the stories read this month. Thank you so much for submitting. Let me know what your favorite is in the comments down below. Check out the next LMIAY for June, and maybe think about submitting, maybe not. It's always up in the air, but you know, or write for yourself just to have fun. That's really what it's all about. So thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with me this morning. Have a great week, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?